Degrees of freedom. Knowledge of performance, knowledge of results. In this video, I will be covering different variations of the overhead dumbbell press while changing the degrees of freedom. I will first model the overhead press. In this first clip, I will be modeling the overhead press while sitting in a chair. By modeling the exercise first, the learner can have a visual demonstration about how to perform the skill, also known as observational learning. Sitting down in a chair will allow the performer to concentrate more on the primary exercise without worrying about other degrees of freedom. As my movements are slow and controlled, I will reiterate specific cues the learner must follow, giving him external augmented feedback. As my father performs the same exercise he just observed, I will critique his posture, making sure the proper muscles selected are intended for this exercise. By giving him specific feedback during the exercise, this will be known as concurrent feedback. There will also be feedback given after the exercise has been performed, such as making sure his elbows come to a 90-degree angle before extending back up. Before progressing, I must make sure that the learner is competent enough in certain invariant features, because the overhead press sequence of actions will never change. In this next clip, we will progress from the chair to another surface to sit, but without back support. This will now engage other muscles, such as the back and core, in order to perform this exercise. As you may now see, as the modifications increase difficulty, the weight being used may be lowered due to certain parameters. Other muscles are now being activated to perform the same exercise. My father will now replicate what he just observed. As he now performs the exercise, it will take a couple of reps in order to feel what muscles are necessary to engage and recruit to help perform this movement. After a couple repetitions, I can notice an improvement on technique. The dumbbells are now coming close to touching. If not, his core is tight and his breathing is controlled. This short-term memory must be repeated quickly. If not, it will be forgotten. In our next clip, we will be incorporating the lower body by performing a seated squat. And at the top, we will still do our invariant overhead press. After I demonstrate the exercise, I explain that while performing this movement, we must always remember to stay slow and controlled, making sure our body weight stays primarily on our heels, giving us the highest percentage for balance. As stated before, as the exercise gradually increases difficulty, performers may have to switch to lighter weight in order to still complete the movement safely. I give my father the option that after performing the overhead press, he may then lower the weights by his sides in order to still perform the squat. If he decides to keep the weights in an overhead position, more muscles will be incorporated, such as the rear deltoids. Concurrent feedback is very important because as the exercise is being performed by the learner, accurate feedback can be corrected in the next repetition. That way, there is less thinking about corrections and just doing it. New information that is given to the learner can only last between 20 to 30 seconds before forgetting it. However, if the feedback is given while performing the exercise, the chances of it going undetected or filtered out will be minimized. Certain cues that I have explained in the previous variations of the overhead press was remembered by my father, such as keeping the core tight. The more the skill is practiced and performed at a consistent basis, the more the skill will be transitioned into long-term memory. By providing error correction and motivational reinforcement feedback, especially for early learners, it increases their self-esteem, confidence, and belief that they can achieve. Doing this along with providing meaningful, accurate feedback is also known as giving the learner knowledge of performance. And the final variation that will be demonstrated and performed is the overhead press while pedaling on a stationary bike. As you can see, before I even get on the bike, I make sure that the seat is adjusted appropriately for my height. If standing side by side, your hips should be parallel with the seat of the bike as demonstrated. By incorporating the bike and pedaling, it forms the process of constraining the system's available degrees into a movement pattern, also known as coordination. As more coordination and degrees of freedom both increase, so does the level of difficulty. The lower body is now fully engaged. The hips, knees, and ankle joints are now moving in sync. The proprioceptors found in these joints and other muscles being incorporated now detect major changes in muscle tension, joint position, and equilibrium. My movements will always remain smoothly controlled as demonstrated. As competency increases and basic cues turn into long-term memory, my father and I will not have to think as much because we have mastered enough fundamentals to move from cognitive beginner stage into the autonomous intermediate stage. In this stage, we will be able to increase the weight and repetitions of the overhead press, as well as either increasing our force used to cycle, increasing the spin pedals per minute, or both. Before my father gets on a stationary bike, he will have to adjust it according to his height, making sure that the seat is parallel to his hips. After doing so, I will hand him the weights once he is safe and comfortable on the bike. His proprioceptors are now kicking in. He can feel the difference and now must use his entire body to perform the exercise. Because this is new, I will still reinforce and give concurrent, accurate feedback about his breathing, as well as making sure his core is engaged to help with his balance. My name is Zanel Hudson, and thank you for watching.